Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino, and today I have a special guest. Her name is Karen Gilhooly. Hey, Karen, how are you today?
I'm great. Wonderful to be here. Thanks, Cesar.
Good, awesome. So, why don't you tell us by giving us a little bit of who you are? Let the listeners and viewers know who you are.
Sure. So I am a person that's been in the workplace for a little over 30 years. I've spent most of my career in global banking, managing and leading teams of all different kinds of functions, sales teams, product teams, business development teams, digital teams, you name it. I've managed just about everything that you could imagine in a functional area. And about a year and a half ago, I made a decision to take all of that leadership experience and step out into my own entrepreneurial endeavor and work with organizations, large and small, to help them raise the level of engagement within their employee workforce. So I work with leaders to help them bring the best out in their people.
Okay, awesome. Well, I definitely want to learn more about that. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing. Where are you originally from?
Aha. So I am from the south side of Chicago. I'm the daughter of a fireman. I came from a family of firefighters, grandpa, cousins, uncles, all of that. And I grew up in that type of a family where um, I guess it was pretty normal for people to think about running into places that most people want to run away from.
Hmm.
And so then that's really laid a strong foundation for how I've actually approached the workplace as well. But what's interesting, I guess, out of all of that is that my dad really loved his career. I had a chance to see him in action and enjoying every minute of what he did when he was on the job. But there was only one rule that he gave me when I was 16 years old and ready to start dating. And he said, listen, he goes, I don't care who you bring home, but there's only one rule. Do not bring home a fireman. And so, of course, that's ultimately what I ended up marrying. And so now I can add a husband to that long list of
Yeah.
people and the first responder status.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Another thing that's interesting is again, is the environment you're born into, right?
Mhm.
In your case, again, your father being a fireman and having that, and I've talked to other people that their parents might be this or that, whatever that might be. It's interesting how we as kids, right, create our own environment or our own lives around that, right? It's like, what your parents do, you're going to emulate or you're going to copy.
Yes.
And it's very interesting to see that. Why do you think that's the case? From your perspective, like even from your own life experience. Again, you that's where it created the foundation for you to take a different approach on things. Yet,
Mhm.
why wouldn't it be a little bit different? Is it because that's all you knew, or how does that psychological aspect work for you?
Well, I was really fortunate. I mean, both my parents were very dedicated to the family. So I come from a family of four kids. I'm the oldest, and then I've got two brothers and a sister right behind me. And family was always first. And I know that you hear that a lot, especially today, family first, family first. But my parents actually lived that motto. They actually did put us first, and we felt very much loved and um, supported in whatever it was that we were doing. So I think I was very fortunate in that regard. The second thing I was very fortunate with is that both my parents were in a spot where they felt good. So I mentioned being able to watch my dad enjoy his job. He was in love with his job. He loved getting up and going to the firehouse when it was his time to take on his shift. That's what he wanted to do from the time he was a little kid. And I think that really set the stage for me to see what it looked like when your parents enjoy what they do. And in comparison, I had many friends who grew up in families that looked very similar to mine, but maybe the parents weren't quite as in love with their job as what my parents were. Now, my mom was a homemaker, so she didn't have a professional career. But as I learned from becoming a mom myself, being a homemaker is actually a very interesting and multifaceted job. For all intents and purposes, you're the CEO of the family. Now, I
Yeah.
don't mean to say that in disrespect to the other side of the equation, the spousal side, but there is one person typically that's running the household, and that, in my case, was my mom. So she enjoyed what she was doing. My dad enjoyed what he was doing. They were in the right place at the right time, doing the right things with the skills that they had, and that transferred over to me. So there was never an expectation in my mind that I would want to do anything other than be in a place where I could do my best work and be happy at it. Being happy was really an important piece coming through.
Yeah. And I enjoy what you mentioned, and I think when people are able to really enjoy their job and really see that as, not see it as a job, right? A lot of people, there's that idea of, and I've seen a lot too, right? That I think it was Les Brown that talked about it, and he said something that said on Monday mornings people are literally dying to by going to work or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
it's true. At the end of the day, it's like people don't want to go to work, and I think the statistic shows that on Monday mornings is when most of the people, or that's when you have the most heart attacks than any other day in the week. Because again, people don't like that, right? And
No.
I think when you start looking at it from that perspective of, well, if I enjoy my job, then it's not perceived as a job, and is perceived as a lifestyle, and or is perceived as something that I really enjoy. And in all reality, we should enjoy the job that we're doing, whether you're an entrepreneur and or you're doing your 9 to 5, because you spend most of your time doing that anyways, right?
100%, Caesar. You will not get any argument from me out of this, and I think it's got a huge implication on so many things. So let's say that you are, a parent, whether you're a single parent or you're in a two parent household. You go to a job that you really don't like. And believe it or not, it takes a lot of energy out of you to be in an environment where it's just not working for you. It drains you of all of the good stuff that makes us who we are. So you go spend 8 hours in an environment where you're not fully turned on, and then you leave and you come home and you've got little kids. I mean, if you don't have kids, maybe you've got, friends or family or whatever it's going to be. You're going to interface with those people, and you are never going to be your true self because you drain that all away in the workplace.
Hmm.
Most importantly, for those, if there are kids or younger people, anyone that individual comes in contact with is living a representation of what it's going to look like. People around this individual, this drained individual, think that that's the way it will be. And it shouldn't be that way. It really should not be. Work, when you are going to a job that's completely aligned with who you are, it should be a joyous expression of who you are. That's how I define work. And as you mentioned so rightfully, when you're actually in that zone, you're on fire, man. You're
Hmm.
actually really enjoying what you do. Take a look at you. You
Yeah.
you are loving what you do, and it comes across, and people pick up on that. It's what another way I think about it is when you're in that place where you're supposed to be in the workplace, you become almost like an electrical outlet. that other people can come and plug in and get energy from you if
Mm,
you are aligned. But if you're one of these people who is literally draining the energy out, when other people come, there's nothing to give. And
yeah.
so I think that's one of the big challenges that I think we face in this world. I mean, I don't know if you're aware of the statistic or not, but less than a third, less than a third of the people here in the United States actually love what they do. That
Wow.
means two-thirds of the working population is either asleep at the wheel or actually detests what they do. So think about what that means for our society. Think about that for a second. That's not a very good statistic.
No.
And when I left to go do this next phase of my career, that was actually my commitment. I want more people to enjoy what they do. And there's a lot that goes into that, but ultimately, on its face, that's kind of the mission call for where I want to go over the next several years in this part of my life.
No, and that's good. And I think one of the other things that I can add to that, I always tell people, and this is relatable to anything, except since we're talking about a job and enjoying your job, is relatable to that too. Is if your job is subtracting from your life and not adding, then you don't need that job. You got to find something that you enjoy. You need something that is adding to your life, or a job that's adding to your life, because again, as you mentioned, you will be able to be more joyful, you'll be more happy like your parents
Mhm.
were, be able to be happy. Then again, all of that is going to translate over to your family, your friends, your kids, right? And so you want to definitely be in an environment where you're enjoying what you're doing day in and day out. The
Yeah.
second thing to that is where I definitely feel like, and I want to get your opinion on this, is how you were able to do it. Being in the industry for 30 plus years before you decided to take that leap. Um, how was that? Because again, being able to say, I'm going to stick to this, and then again, there's really good jobs that pay you good money for sure, but working for somebody else. Except the challenges, as you mentioned, based on the statistics, you know, only 1% of those people, or one third of those people, are happy, right?
Mhm.
The other
Mhm.
ones are not. And so how are you able to sustain and maintain a joyful job year over year?
Yeah. Well, based on those statistics, there are probably a good number of people that are listening to this podcast right now that fall into that two-thirds population. And for those folks, I'll tell you this, it doesn't have to be that way. I talk with a lot of people, whether they're senior executives who are trying to make a change in their organization or the front line that's actually executing these jobs. And what I hear a lot is that, well, I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice.
Mm,
I've got a mortgage, I've got kids, I've got bills to pay, I've got to make a life for myself, all of that. And you know what? There is some truth to that. It's more than just some truth. That is the truth. But the reality is that in any particular job, you, the individual, have the opportunity to make a change. So if you are in a job that you really don't like or you've grown bored with, which is more likely the case, then it's really up to you to figure out what it is that you can do either in that job or maybe in a related job that is going to make you feel like you're actually doing something. The issue is less about do you like the job? And what I actually think it is that people feel that they're wasting their time. I mean, if we think about it, time, these minutes that all of us are given when we're born, our lifetime, that is the most important resource that we have. And when we're putting our minutes to an effect where we feel it's worth something, then you actually feel good about it. But again, in the workplace, many people feel that the time that they're spending there isn't productive. Like, why am I doing this? What purpose does this mean? I'm working with procedures or in an environment that's so outdated. It doesn't match up with where things are today. So the advice I would have for people who are listening is number one, assess your environment. Take a look at what's going on. Where are the areas that you think there might be an opportunity to improve or change things up a little bit? Don't be afraid to have a conversation with your boss or whoever it is that's going to help you and support you. Make sure that you have that conversation. Don't be silent. Don't be afraid. Raise it up. Third, remember this, your life, your career is not a spectator sport. You have to own it. I mean, I
Mhm.
think I've listened to some of your podcasts, Caesar. I mean, this is your message. Own your life. Own it, embrace it, be
Yeah.
responsible for it, take charge of it. And the same is true with your job. If it's not the right thing, then figure out the ways that you are going to make that happen. And in every organization, there's at least one person that you can talk to figure out how to get out of the doldrums, you know?
Yeah.
And most times it can be a tiny little switch, a little bit of a switch, a new responsibility, a new skill that you're going to learn, maybe a different group of people that you're going to interact with. You don't have to make monumental changes in order to get back on track. Some cases you do, but for most people, it's making that slight adjustment and making the adjustment up here. Do
Mhm.
I want to be happy? Do I want to find that opportunity? Do I want to be in the mix? Once you've activated that, you're definitely on the track to making something really positive happen.
Yeah, and that's huge. And the other thing too, which again, I think that's the biggest thing is a lot of people don't want to take the responsibility and they want to leave it up to the job. Well, the job is not doing this, is not doing that. They're looking at all these external factors without
Mhm.
really looking at the internal factors. What are the things that you have to do as a person, as an individual, to make those changes? Do you got
Yeah.
to get better at your craft? Do you have to have a better type of attitude? Do you have to work more on your internal beliefs, right? Like a lot of times we look at all the external aspects. And then the other thing that I also believe is that while yes, sometimes there's a lot of validity to the fact that maybe there's perhaps you're not making enough money to take care of some of the things, as you mentioned, your mortgage, your car, all these different things. I
Uh-huh.
also believe though that we, especially in America, where we have access to so much credit, we
Yes.
tend to live above our means. Well, it's okay. I'll get this credit card and charge it anyways, and I'll just pay it over time. And before you know it, that shiny syndrome takes over your life, and you're spending so much, and now you're making more than your means. You're spending more than your means, and you're not making enough money. Where now you get frustrated. You want to blame it on the external factors without even looking into the internal aspect, right?
Yeah, yeah, and think about that. Think about that person that actually finds himself in that situation where they think that, the next model car or a bigger house or whatever it's going to be, that
The
that
new
that
iPhone
that
every
yeah,
six months.
that's going to somehow or other buy happiness. And as someone who's walked that road many times, the external stuff is not where the happiness is. It comes from within, and it comes from being at peace with yourself, aligned with who you are, and being in an opportunity to be able to bring that best self forward, regardless of where that best self may be present in the workplace, at home, in your community, in your church, wherever it's going to be. The expectation is that if you can be your best, you're going to find such peace inside of you that you can't buy that. You can't go to the store and buy a gallon of happiness. It doesn't work that way. You have to be able to dig and be ready to accept the things that go along with that, because finding happiness is a journey, and it's often full of ups and downs, some heartaches, some disappointments, failures, all of that. But it's through that process that we learn who we are and we learn what we can take, and that resilience that people keep talking about over and over and over again. Like you can buy it but you can, put in the order for Amazon and tomorrow it's going to show up on your front door. Resilience is built, and it's built the hard way. And though it may seem absolutely terrible, what I have found is that every situation, no matter what it is, has a positive and a negative to it. And that might sound simplistic, but if you want, you can find the bright spot in just about anything. Even in the most dark of moments, there's a bright spot there if you're willing to find it. And that's really, if you can organize around that, that really makes such a difference.
Yeah, no, definitely. So let's talk about the fact that you were in this industry for many years, and
Yeah.
maybe some people might be asking, why now, or why would you take that leap, right? I always talk about taking the leap of faith and saying, hey, I'm gonna essentially leave something that might be secure, that I know that has been secure for so many years, and I'm going to take the route of being an entrepreneur, right? Because I'm sure you got a lot of that, or some flavor of that. I know I did even on my early 30s when I or late 30s when I decided to do this. And they're
Mhm.
like, "Are you dumb? Are you like, are you really gonna do this? Like, you're gonna leave that job?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think it's time." And so, two things to that. Number one, what was that kind of conversations, or what were you hearing? And then
Mhm.
number two, which I'm sure is another one, is people might always say, "I'm too young. I'm too old. I don't have the right skills. I don't know everything. I don't know if I can make it." Like, there's always all this external excuses as to why not doing it, and a lot of times is the age barrier, right? And so obviously you're doing it, you're making it, which is huge, and I know that you can speak to that to our listeners.
Sure, sure, sure. Well, but first of all, that it's not for everybody. I mean, if this is
Mhm.
something
True.
that if this is something that intrigues you, there never is a great time to do it. It's kind of like having kids. Some people sit there and say, "Well, I'm going to wait, I'm going to wait, I'm going to wait till everything's absolutely perfect, and then I will have my children." And what happens typically for many people is that they're 50 years old before their whole life is straightened out to the point where they feel they've got enough money, they're in a great position in their job, a wonderful situation in their community, whatever. Life happens, and that is something that I think we as a society have kind of gotten a little bit away from. Life happens, and part of that happening is your ability to lean into it and actually take some risks. So yes, I was in a structured role for over 30 years. I had great positions. I worked for great companies. I made a lot of money and had great titles, people working for me. I had it all. And what happened was that, as I was saying before, at some point, it became not worth it anymore. I found myself in a position where I didn't feel that I was able actually to use all the great stuff that was inside of me, all these wonderful experiences and skills and talents that I've developed over the years. I wanted to be able to deploy that in a new and refreshing way. I had that particular observation. Secondly, I looked at the world around me and I saw all of these people that were quite unhappy, many of which that I worked with. And I
Hmm.
thought, you know what? Actually got something here that I can bring to make it better. I truly, even though it sounds simplistic, I believe that one of the major things that each of us, each individual, is commissioned to do when they're born is to make the world a better place by the time you pass on. And I don't know that everybody fully understands that, but even in the smallest way, if you can make it better for someone, and you're going to make it better for yourself. This is not a selfish game. It's about being playing in the larger sense. The third thing had to do with the fact that I had I'd watched people make this leap throughout my career, and I always was the one sitting on the sideline saying, you know, I'd like to do that. I'd like to do that. But there was always that reason, always that like, well, maybe I'll do it tomorrow, or maybe I'll do it next year, or whatever. And then for me, as I said, a year and a half ago, a whole bunch of things happened. My parents ended up being very sick, and I needed to spend more time with them. The workplace was going through a lot of change. I just found that it was time. It was time. So I took the risk, walked off, and found myself in this environment that was completely different than what I expected. I mean, it just everything that I had known and loved and trusted and had kind of established my way of getting things done almost evaporated, boom, just like that. And I had to recreate that overnight. And you know what this is like
Yep.
because you've done this too.
Yep.
And I've made probably more mistakes in this past year and a half than I've made in my entire 30-year career. And you know what the biggest benefit to me is I've learned, which I always suspected and had always talked about, but now I'm actually living it, that a mistake is only a mistake if you choose to learn nothing from it.
Mm.
So mistakes are the way of life. I mean, if you take a look around where you're sitting right now, the very room that you're in, just like the one that I'm in, every single thing that's in this room is the reflection of a mistake somewhere along the line. the fact that we're able to put up drywall in the room, the fact that you have lights, the fact that we have a computer, the fact that we're able to have this virtual conversation, this is all the result of many people earlier on making lots of mistakes and not giving up, saying, okay, well, that didn't work. Let me try this. This didn't work. Let me try that. Not giving up, that resilience factor that I was talking about before, such a key part. So I figure if they can do it, I can too. And once I decided to give myself permission to actually fall down a few times and to, instead of beating myself up, put it to use, that was a game changer for me. And I think that's something that people in life, not just in entrepreneurial sense, but just in
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
they can apply that.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge that's like a golden uh tip and bomb that you just throw there about the mistakes. And again, we grew up in this society where where you go to school, and one of the things that the teachers tells you is like, no, don't fail, don't get F's, don't, all this perfection, right? Which
Mm,
obviously, yeah, I get it. We wanna be able to do everything right. Except again, you do have to fall down the journey, along the journey, so that you can get up and do it better the second time. You do
yeah,
have to,
exactly.
fall out of that bike so that you know how to ride it better the second time, right? And it's like, as we go through all this mistakes, or these lessons to be learned, they're an educational experience, and that's where you get the most out of it. Now you know how to do it. I
That's
think
right.
the only failure, or the only true failure that you're gonna have, and you kind of mentioned that too, the only true failure that anyone has is if you're not learning from that failure and you're doing it all over again the same way. And
That's right.
oftentimes we do that. We
We
do that,
do, we do, we
right?
do. And there and in life, and again in the workplace, which is where I'm spending a lot of time, I see that, people do things the wrong way, ways that they know are not the best, but they do it because they're comfortable. We are creatures of habit. Even if we know that there's a better way or an idea that you might want to try, it's easier just not to do it. It's safe, this idea of being safe. Like, I understand this. I've got it. I've figured out how to make it work. It may not be optimal, but it's the way that it is. To take a little bit of a risk to say, well, okay, maybe you don't have to, completely turn everything upside down, but make a little adjustment there. See if
Hmm.
it works. And if it doesn't, understand that. Don't make that the last little experiment that you have. Try another one. Keep going until you get it right. You brought up the point about riding a bike. I don't know anybody, and of course, someone I'm sure on this podcast or maybe viewing it further down the line is going to come back and say, "Oh, that's wrong. That's wrong." I'm just going to say, in my understanding, in my observation, my knowledge of the world, I have yet to know one person that can get on a two-wheel bike and ride it straight away. I've never seen that.
Right. Yeah.
And just like in the workplace, when you show up to do a job, you're not going to get that right the first time either. You're going to go through a learning curve and you're going to make lots of mistakes. And if you can figure out how to apply those so that you don't make that same mistake again, then a couple things. It makes you better, but it also gives you an opportunity to share that perspective with other people so that they don't go down that bad path, you
Hmm.
know? So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I get you. Let's talk about purpose, right? I
Ah,
like the idea of what you have here in purpose, and you say aligning my purpose with the role at work and putting that together. And you also go even further. Purpose and the job are two different things. So let's talk
yeah.
about the purpose.
Yeah. A purpose is what drives you. Purpose is what it's innate in each of us. And um, if you're lucky, and because it doesn't appear for everyone, you actually have to spend some time thinking about it. Why am I here? What is my purpose? What is that? And I've decided that my purpose is to make life better for people, specifically in the workplace, but in general. I want to help them find happiness in their lives. Other people whose purpose might be that they actually want to make folks healthier,
Hmm.
whether that's physically or spiritually or however, that they might want to go down that road. It's what drives you. At the end of your life, what is it that you want people to say about you?
Mm,
That is where I think you find the purpose. And I think that a lot of people, myself included for a while, mix up the idea of your purpose and your job. Your job is a vehicle. It's like the bike. You
mhm,
know, you get on the bike and you can go to the store, you can go to the school, you can go to church, you can go wherever you're going to go. It's a vehicle to get you there. And I think that's the same with the job. That when most people take their job, they have an idea of whether it's going to fit for them. And as they get further into it, they either realize that it works or it doesn't. But the job, if it aligns with you, is really something very special because it allows you to execute your purpose. And in today's world, we've got a lot of people in jobs that not only don't reflect their purpose, like ultimately, what do I want to achieve at the end as my part of my contribution, but it doesn't line up with their skills or their talents either. And that's a real misfit. They fell into it and didn't necessarily think about it. They just took the job because it was a paycheck.
mm,
And and that's the unfortunate situation. So if you're one of those people out there that are in that situation, and there are many of them, then take a look at the job that you're in and try to figure out how you plug in. So what makes you special in that job? Why are you uniquely qualified? And I don't mean that in a like an arrogant way. I really mean that
mhm,
to think about it. What makes me so special about the way I do my job? Think about that and think about how you bring yourself to that role and make it unique for you. And if you can't find that intersection, that's a good warning sign. Think about, am I in the right spot? Am I doing the right
mm.
thing? Do I need to look at something different? Because when that is aligned, it's a very, very special thing and a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Do you feel like would you like meditate? Would you journal? Like how can you ask yourself those questions so that you can get yourself thinking about it, right? Are there any specific actions that you might suggest people can do to start asking, and I like that. It's like, why am I here, right? Or why
Yep.
am I doing this job? And so again, what are some maybe ideas, or what would you suggest people can ask or do to start honing in on that? Because you're right, a lot of people, they don't realize that, and they're probably in their last days, or they're sitting in their deathbed thinking about it at that point. I'm like, if I would have done this, my life would have been different. By that time, it's too late.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. And I'll answer this with in two ways. So the first, I'll give you the practical side, which is an idea that I came up with a while ago, and it has to do with thinking of my life in one of three buckets. Okay. The first bucket is where I'm absolutely on fire. I'm in the right place, doing the right thing. I'm having a great time. Everything is tuned on. That's bucket one. Bucket two is where I I don't know. I'm just like in this very strange limbo like place. And bucket three is where I'm actually really not liking what I'm doing. I really detest it. And what I have found to be very helpful for me is at the end of the day, I actually do an inventory of my minutes. And this sounds kind of crazy, but it actually works for me. And it's worked for a lot of people that I've talked with. We sit and we say, okay, so if this was the day, how many minutes did I spend in bucket one? How many minutes did I spend in bucket two? And how many minutes did I spend in bucket three? And it's very stark. When you look at it, it's very, very stark because when you start doing this, the reality is that you will see, most likely, if you're like, if whoever does this, if you're like most people, you will see that the minority of your minutes are spent in bucket one, the minority. And you'll see that there is a good bunch of minutes that you're spending in the middle, and then a good portion in bucket three, which is where you're really not having a great time at all. And when you look at it under that lens, that actually gives you the ability to make some very purposeful, conscientious changes to how you're spending your time. So if you know now, so most people go through the day, they have no idea. They wake up, they do their thing, motor through the day, go to bed, wake up and go do it again. They're not thinking, well, how actually did I spend my time? They're just doing it. But all of a sudden, when that information becomes available to you, when you actually look at this and you say, holy cow, look at that. I spent 5% of my day actually doing something that made me feel good. I don't know too many people unless, maybe they have a particular way of thinking that makes them enjoy pain. Most people don't enjoy pain. Most people don't. Most
Right.
people like feeling good. So if you're one of those folks, then you're going to try to figure out what am I doing over the course of the day that's causing those types of things to happen. And it's kind of a funny thing. Now, I was talking with someone a few weeks ago and they said, well, I've got most of my time allocated to that middle bucket, that limbo bucket. And that's not so bad, is it? And I said, well, actually, it is. Because you don't want to live your life in the gray. I mean, we've heard this term, um, God, the quitting, the quiet quitters. The quiet quitters are in bucket two. They're just they're sucking it up. They're saying, okay, I'm gonna punch the clock. I'm gonna go through the day, and then as soon as it's over, it's over. I'm just gonna get through it. Is it terrible? Do I absolutely detest what I'm doing? No, but I'm not alive either. I'm not invigorated. I'm not energized. I'm not any of those things that we feel when we're in bucket one. And that is wrong. That's wrong. You shouldn't want to spend your day in the gray zone. Pick a bucket.
Yeah.
Be over here in bucket one, or, and this sounds kind of crazy, be over here in bucket three and absolutely hate it. But don't be in the middle. That is terrible. It's very, very bad. So I have found that doing this bucket journaling every day, which is something that I made a commitment to myself to do, that has been so cathartic for me. And every day, despite the fact of doing this, every day doesn't mean I'm going to spend most of my minutes in bucket one, but it does hold me accountable to it. The other thing I do that goes along with the journaling is I give myself a score. So on a starting at one and going to three, where do I end up? And what's kind of funny is that since I've started doing this, I have yet to go into bucket two. Overall, on the whole, my overall score has been one dot something.
Yeah.
Now, 1.0 is just the most fabulous of all things, and that's highly unlikely that you'd spend a whole day there. But to be one something, that's pretty damn good in my book. And apologize for the,
No.
the slight
Yeah.
error with the bad word, sorry. But to be in that one zone, one dot something is good. To be on the other side of two is great. If you're in the three zone, when you're in three, the beautiful thing about three is that it is so painful to be there. Most people, when they're in that three bucket, with a little nudge, they're going to make a change. When they realize where they're at, they will make a change because it is just so not great. Now, so that's the mechanical side of it. But here's the other piece that actually helped me arrive at this, and it did have to do with end of life. And not that I'm a morbid person and spend a lot of time, when I'm going to move on, but I do believe that at some point we do have to give an accounting to the man upstairs, whoever, whatever you call it, the greater being. That individual is going to say, when you were born, I gave you this beautiful gift, this absolutely wonderful gift of all of these minutes, and I expected you to do something with those minutes.
Mm.
What did you do with your minutes? And I can't believe that when I have my chance to have this conversation, that there's going to be a really great response if I say, I spent 70% of them in bucket two. It's
Yeah.
just, what did you do with that? Why did you do that? What the ultimate waste? Why did you do that? I think that at the end, The goal is to say that you spent more of your time being alive in bucket one. And that's where life is. Life is in bucket one. It really is. So anyway, that's
Yeah.
my little
No,
tail end.
and I totally agree with you. And then it reminds me of something that I think it was Desmond Washington, or it probably was Les Brown, one of those two. That again, going back to that, it says,
Mhm.
imagine you're sitting on your deathbed, and surrounding you on your deathbed are all the dreams uh,
Yeah. Hmm.
that could have come to life, except again, they now have to die with you because you were so afraid.
That's
Or
right. Mhm.
think of the idea that the richest place in the world is not in the Middle East or where they have all this gold. It's at the cemetery because there's that's where you have all these dreams that have
Yeah.
been buried. In
Mhm.
all these inventions that we could have had, because again, somebody didn't want to, as you mentioned, maybe got out of that bucket, and they
Yeah.
were so afraid, the fear or the unknown, or they didn't take the action, right, to be able to do it. They just, strolled through life and wasted, and before they knew it, we're here today, we're gone tomorrow, and we don't
That's
realize
right.
it,
That's right.
right?
And it's scary. I mean,
Yes.
but the bucket two is the rot. We talked about that a few minutes ago, where people know that it's not great, but it's what they know. They figured it out. It's like I can get through the day. I'm going to numb myself. I'm going to completely surround myself with this cocoon that's going to allow me to just get through it and not have to think about it and just go through the motions. Your life was not meant to go through the motions. It was absolutely, positively not. And I would challenge anybody that's listening to this podcast today. If you're in that zone, call Cesar, call me, call anybody. I don't
Yes.
care who you call, but get out of it because it is not the right place to be. And there are strategies that you can take, whether you're inventorying your minutes or going to talk about alternatives, whatever it's going to be. There are ways and methods to get out of that. And once you've done that, you won't want to go back to two again. You once you reignite yourself, you just don't want to go back. It's just not a great place to be. It's just
Yeah,
not.
I agree. So, Karen, are you right now? Are you working with businesses to be able to help with their employees? Tell me a little bit about your services and how can people get involved with you?
Yeah, so there's a variety of ways that people work with me. I predominantly work with companies
Okay.
and with leaders who realize that there's a problem in the workplace. So if you're running a company and you're trying to execute a mission and you're looking out at your workforce and you've got, let's say, 10 people, okay? So according to those statistics that I just mentioned, you got 10 people, all right? Three of them want to work with you. It's like, let's get it done. Five of them are sitting there and saying, or it's, saying, I don't really care,
Mhm.
whatever. They're in the
Yeah.
whatever mode. And then two of them are saying, I absolutely hate everything about this company. I don't want to do anything about it.
Wow.
So if you're a leader, can you get anything done with that kind of thing? No. So that's the environment that I work in. Hopefully with whether there are 10 teams or 100 teams or 1,000 people teams, the idea is that you want everybody lined up behind you. And there are a lot of strategies to be able to do that, whether you were doing experiential exercises, doing some one-on-one coaching, doing some analysis of what people's jobs look like, the procedures that their environment is offering them, all different kinds of things to make sure that people actually feel that they're moving in that number one bucket right direction.
Yeah.
I work with people in that regard. And then I also do some one-on-one coaching, not a lot, but I do have people that I speak with that are trying to figure out how to move to that bucket one proposition. And that's a lot of tough love
Yep.
because at the end of the day, as we've been talking about all day long, I mean, I can have an opinion, you can have an opinion, but until the person themselves decides that they want to make a change, it really doesn't matter. It
Right.
doesn't matter what I think or you think or anybody thinks. The person
Right.
has to
Totally.
think.
Yeah, for sure. Where can people find out more about you, your company, anything you have going on?
Oh, I would love for them to come and take a look at me. I've got a very active engagement on LinkedIn. Then you can find me under my name. And then my company name is called True North Collaboration. I've got a company page as well. And then on my website, which is truenorthcollab.com. And also, hopefully you'll put that into
I am. Yep.
yeah, the numbers here, but it's collab, COLLAB, truenorthcollab.com. And I welcome anyone, even whether you want to work with me, in some kind of professional engagement, or you just want to talk, please call, get a
Yeah.
hold of me, because your life is the most precious thing that you've got, and it impacts so many different aspects of our world. And if you take a look at the world today,
Yeah.
not a great place, you
Right.
know? So we all have to work together to make it better.
For sure. For sure. My last question for you, or actually two questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is, do you have any daily habits, anything that you do on a day-to-day basis that you've been doing or you started doing that you know is going to help you get through your day?
Yes. And this is something that I'm very committed to. So the first thing that I do when I wake up in the morning is I spend at least 15 minutes, but ideally 30 to 45, in reflection. And that reflection starts out by recognizing the three things that I'm most grateful for. And it's not always the same things. It's going to sound not great when I say I force myself, but sometimes your life is not going well.
Mhm.
Sometimes you have to take and recognize that you may be in a tough spot, but if you look to the left or to the right, there are people who have things a lot worse than you do. And so to be conscious about the fact that I'm blessed and to find three things, that's how I start. The second thing that I do is I think about what I want the day to look like at the end. So when the day is over, how do I want to feel? So I spend some time thinking about that. And once you put that into your head, it sounds kind of crazy, but once you put yourself into that mind zone, it's almost like, you're coming onto the interstate and you want to get over into the passing lane. So that puts me into the passing lane.
Mhm.
Don't stay in the passing lane all day long. I end up going in the middle or sometimes over to the far right, but I want to start my day in the passing lane.
I love that. I love that. The last question is for the people that are listening to us and watching us. If they are going through any challenge, whatever challenge that might be, what is one thing you can say to them to start overcoming that challenge?
Know that you're not alone. That you are absolutely not alone. And there are people who really want to help you. So I know that might seem strange, because a lot of times when we go through troubles in our lives, we bring it inside. We don't share it with others, because we think it's a burden. You are a special person. You are a special person to so many people. Talk about the problem. It's not as bad as you think. There's an answer for everything. There really is. So
Yeah.
that would be my one last thing to say.
Yeah. Thank you, Karen. Really appreciate having you here on the show. Really appreciate all the insight that you gave us today. So thank you again for being here.
You are an excellent host, Cesar. Excellent. It was a very lively bucket one conversation. So thank you.
I
Thank you.
love that. I love that. Thank you so much. And for the rest of you guys, do me a favor. Please make sure that you follow Karen. I will be having all the information on the show notes. And do me a favor, share this message because somebody definitely needs to hear this. I will see you guys at the next episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Thank you.
God bless.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.